I started off where I finished the last day, working on my power facility. I don't need a lot to keep the power up and running at the start of the game, but it's good to have a little wiggle room. From getting rid of the biomass burners, I could take the biomass fuel from the old ones and put it in the new ones, kind of giving myself a little bit of a head start. While I was letting some of the resources build up, I went and grabbed some SAM to work on the MAM quest that involves SAM. I should have picked up a bit more because I needed more than the 12 that I got to start with. Another quest I could complete in the MAM was for the alien proteins, so I made some of those. And then I remembered yet again, the point of these videos is to stick to the objective, so I started making cables at the crafting bench. The hub had just been sitting in the dirt for a while, so I finally decided it was time to get it on a platform. And then I did a little base cleanup for a minute. Once I felt like the cleanup was in a good spot, I got back to the iron rods and working towards getting screws made. After the fact, I realized that I should have probably used the conveyor lifts to save myself some room on the ground, but whatever. It's okay. If the screws and iron rods take up a lot of space in this factory, I don't really care. Sometimes in this game it can be hard to remember how to space things out so your system works right. I decided to have 2 constructors building screws, and the rest of the iron rods I would save in a storage unit at some point. Because I wasn't paying attention to how much fuel the biomass burners were getting, the power went out on me again. So I spent some time scrounging up leaves and wood to feed into my power system. Once I got my power back up and running, I got back to working on screws and rods and finishing that up. Then I got on the crafting bench and started making the screws I needed to finish up the milestone I'm currently on. I took a little bit of time at the MAM figuring out which quests I could complete on there and managed to start in on Caterium. I finally got all of the screws that I needed to finish the obstacle clearing milestone. This gave me the solid biofuel resource, which would let me update how my power facility gets its fuel. And that meant I needed to add the constructors to make the biofuel. And that means that I have to make sure the whole system works. I blew a fuse again because the biofuel wasn't feeding into the system fast enough, so I fed it myself for a minute. Then I thought it was due time to get a chainsaw, which meant I needed to build an equipment workshop. I got to chopping down a bunch of trees to get more fuel for more power. If I have more wood and leaves than I would ever possibly need, then I don't have to worry about going out as much. Luckily, the area around my base has a lot to cut down. It's a lot more fun than it really seems like it is. And like I said, if I get more leaves and wood than I need, I don't have to worry about it as much. Then, because the resources at the base have been building out, I can work towards completing the next milestone. The only resource I don't have my system building at the moment is cables, so it's back to the crafting bench. But it's only a bit of time to build out what I need, and now I'm done with another milestone. I know that I'm going to need more power, so this is a good time to add a couple more biomass burners. I totally forgot to add a storage unit to take some of the iron rods from the screw and rod part of the factory. Something I need to work towards is an assembler to build me reinforced iron plates. Another thing that I'd forgotten about was the iron plates that I had being built. I hadn't added onto them since getting the splitters. So I spent some time getting the smelters built, and then I got the constructors added in as well. I was running low on the materials to make foundations, so I had to get some more. And then I realized, like an idiot, I didn't have power running to this constructor that was supposed to be making screws. That also reminded me that it would be a good idea to have those screws feeding into a storage unit. I also remembered that I needed to run up to the SAM supply to get more for the MAM. After getting the SAM resource, I headed back to the MAM to finish up that quest. Then it was time to start working towards the milestone, which meant I needed to start building some rotors. This would mean that I would need more copper wire, and since I hadn't really worked on that part of the warehouse, it was now time to. Which also meant it was time to clear out some more foliage. Eventually I did get a good working surface for building out copper wire. And then I started building out what I needed for copper wire and possibly cable as well. I was running low on iron plates, so I knew I was going to need to go and get some of those soon. The game does tell you it's important to have verticality in your factory, so I started taking that to heart. It took me a minute to figure out the easiest way to make this happen, though. probably because of all the power poles and cables I was running low on cable. This is one of those times where I should have probably stayed concentrated on completing the milestones, but got completely sidetracked. Somehow the conveyor lift wasn't working the way it was supposed to, so I spent a chunk of time trying to figure that out. Once I got it figured out, I got back to work on getting copper wire being manufactured. And yet again, I ran out of reinforced iron plates. Awesome. I got all of the copper ingots connected to the constructors, and that meant copper wire was back in full production. I only needed a couple more rotors to finish out the current milestone, so I got those built out. I also needed some cables, so I got to work on those as well. And because I was coming up on the end of the day, I spent a bit of time messing with the copper wire part of the factory. Oh, and I failed to mention, when I finished those cables, I also finished the milestone, which is a good way to finish this video.